So for this question, the question's asking us to really figure out what the author or the narrator, his point of view is on Michael O'Neill. So it's asking us, what does the narrator or the author think about his own main character? How does he describe his own main character? That's what this question is asking. And we're going to see in A through D, these answer options, two adjectives for each one that are describing one possible way the author might see his own character, Michael, right? And so, for example, in A, maybe it's as an unusual person, but a crafty person. In B, maybe it's as a stubborn, but also a foolish person. In C, maybe he's angry and dangerous. In D, maybe he's reliable and thoughtful. But for this to be the right answer, any of these four options to be the right answer, they both have to be true. So one of the words might be true for one of these options, but if they're not both true, then we can't keep this answer option. They have to both be true for this to be the best choice. So let's keep that in mind as we look through A through D. First of all, right, after you've read the passage, you're probably not getting all of the details after this first read. I know you're on a time constraint. You're reading as quickly as you can. You're skimming. You're looking at details. You're not getting everything. But you should be forming an impression of the main character, who's Michael, right? You should be getting an idea of what type of a character he is. And you're getting that impression, you're getting that understanding from the details that the author himself is including in the story. He's dropping these little details and he's describing the character to give you an understanding of what he is like, what his characteristics are. And the ways that authors can do this is both through direct characterization, in other words, just telling you what he's like, just saying he is a crafty guy, he's a tricky guy, he's unusual. But unfortunately, it's not going to be that easy. Sometimes, also, instead of just giving direct characterization, you'll get an indirect characterization where an author will tell you what a character does and tell you what a character says. And it's from these actions and these dialogues or what the characters are saying, these conversations, that you start to form an understanding of what their character is as well. So you should be looking for direct and indirect ways that the author is sending a message to you and signaling to you, hey, this is who this character is. And these are their attributes. These are their characteristics. If it's not immediately obviously clear to you who Michael is as a character, then you might have to go back to the text to review. In the very first paragraph, it would make sense for the author to give you an introduction to the main character pretty early on, right? So when you're looking back to the text to review the evidence, you should be going to paragraph 1 and saying, okay, where does the narrator tell me a little bit about this character, Michael? And in the bolded words, you can see he says things like he's legendary. This is a legendary tale about him. He's a gentleman of honorable pedigree and many accomplishments. He had a talent for appearing and a talent for disappearing. His most famous feats of escape. So you're kind of combining these direct characterizations or direct descriptions of a character to form an impression of who he is. And I think even after just looking at those bolded phrases, we should be reaching probably a conclusion about what's best here. So is he unusual? Is he crafty? Is there anything here that suggests that he's unusual? Well, he's a gentleman of honorable pedigree and many accomplishments. He's legendary. The tales about him are legendary. He's famous. Would that suggest that he's unusual? Probably, right? Not everybody is famous. Not everybody's outstanding. Not everybody's talented in the same way. So, yeah, and the way that he escapes is kind of mysterious, right? Sometimes he really harms people. He's violent. And sometimes he's really just tricky. And then that second thing that I just said, how he's tricky, right? He's crafty. He's sneaky. He's clever in the ways that he escapes. So A seems like a really good option, and we want to keep that as our strongest option, unless we find one that's better. So going on to B, he's stubborn and foolish. Stubborn, maybe from his interactions with Bridget, he's stubborn, and that might be true. But remember, they both have to be true for it to be the best answer. Is he foolish? No, that's impossible. How could he be foolish when everything we're learning about him is that he's really clever, he's really smart, he's really tricky? So no, that doesn't work. B is bad. C, he's angry and dangerous. Now, I think he's definitely dangerous. You don't want to be on the wrong side of his escape. He sometimes harms people. He sometimes breaks people's necks, right, when he's getting away. Is he angry? No, there's nothing in the story. There's no evidence to support that idea that he's angry. So we really can't go with C because one of those two descriptions is just off. And then finally, D, he's reliable and thoughtful. Reliable, that's kind of a weird word to describe someone who's always on the run, who's on the wrong side of the law, trying to get away from the police. Thoughtful, that has a lot of different connotations, but reliable was already so off that I'm just completely unpersuaded by D. So when we look back at A through D, A is clearly the strongest option. And you're going to be gathering that information from things that the author says about his character in a direct description and direct characterization in the first paragraph of the passage. But you're also going to be kind of piecing that together from how you see the character acting, his actions that he takes, the ways that the way that he carries himself, kind of arrogantly, right, and the way that he interacts with other characters in conversation, especially Bridget.